The concept that mental activity, feelings, and thoughts are situated in the cranium and the brain became the dominant paradigm among scientists as late as the 19th century. Dr. Gall, an Austrian doctor, explored crania by touch. He established a link between bumps, which we all have on our cranium, and our aptitudes and instincts. The math bump is one example. In order to study and compare crania, he made casts of the busts of geniuses, criminals, and madmen. Pierre Dumoutier, a fervent disciple of Dr. Gall and of his method, phrenology, boarded the ship Astrolabe, which was sailing to explore Antarctica and Oceania. He came back with an impressive collection of crania, skeletons, and casts of the busts of live subjects. These items were of great value for learning more about men and how to classify them. Unfortunately, in the historical context of the time, new discoveries led to very dubious conclusions. Cesare Lombroso, an Italian doctor, believed that the study of the cranium could be a way of fighting against crime. For him, a born criminal was a man reverted to the savage state, both physically and morally. Monsieur Le Borgne lost the ability to speak after suffering cerebral lesions to the left frontal lobe of his brain. This observation enabled Paul Broca, a French anatomical doctor, to conclude that this part of the brain controls articulated speech. He became interested in the relationship between the anatomy of the cranium and the brain on the one hand, and mental capacities and intelligence on the other. Despite their undoubted importance, Broca's measurements and conclusions unfortunately later served to reinforce racist ideologies. They were used to justify colonization by the great European powers. Thanks to improvements in microscopy, chemistry, and electricity, Wilder Penfield, a Canadian neurosurgeon, initiated a new method for taking measurements. He used electricity to stimulate certain regions of the brain and was able to identify the areas of the cortex dedicated to sensations and movement. Of course, it was necessary to very carefully regulate the strength of the electric current. Nowadays, research concentrates above all on methods to precisely localize and follow in real time the activity of a living person's brain, if possible, without damaging it. It is MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, that has become the most frequently used technique for cerebral imaging. fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, makes it possible to measure the activity of different regions of the brain, for example during cognitive tests, such as for seeing, speaking, remembering, learning, and decision-making. Blood flows to the parts of the brain associated with these tasks, and the variations in blood flow are measured, making it possible to construct an image of cerebral activity in 2 and 3 dimensions. As ever, the interpretation of the results may lead researchers in a variety of directions. Today, some scientists are still seeking the functional differences between the female and the male brain. And this, despite the fact that differences between individuals of the same sex are greater than those between the two sexes. It is now known that the brain constantly makes new neuronal circuits as a result of day-to-day learning and experience. Other, ever more ambitious projects are taking shape. The Human Brain Project's simulation of the brain involves some 300 experts in neuroscience, neurology, and IT in 24 European countries. The objectives are both numerous and ambitious: to understand the human brain, to create effective diagnostic tools, to improve treatments and medicines, and to map and create a model of the brain. Whereas the scientists of yesteryear sought to know men better and to classify them, those of today seek to open up new ways of healing and to understand the functioning of the brain. It is possible today to achieve things which was scarcely possible to imagine, even in science fiction films, only a few years ago. One example is the brain-computer interface, which makes it possible to establish a direct connection between a brain and a computer. This opens up exciting possibilities. But once again, it will be necessary to be wary of aberrations. When the brain is in question, it's always a good idea to set up safeguards against mad professors.